turn on my microphone. And we'll start this evening by reading our priorities, mission statement, and Director Mayfield is not here at the present time. Director Goza, could you read our priorities, please?
Sure thing. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. Director Schneider, could you read our mission and vision statements?
Our mission statement reads, to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. And our vision statement reads, education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and the community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Schneider. Next up is board reports. Do we have any board reports this evening? Director Goza.
I was late for your discussion, but I attended the, trying to remember what it was called on Friday, the Opportunities, or the Prosperity Summit, right? That's what it's called. And I did take a bunch of notes for you. But I actually kind of liked it. I was a little hesitant on it at first because a lot of people talk about stuff just because they read it in a book, and this lady actually lived it. And it was just, it's kind of interesting to see some of the people that were in the room, because it'll be interesting to me to see they all sit there and talk about how poverty is a huge issue and everything, but we'll see how they all stand if there's a minimum wage raise to come up or something, you know. We had the mayor there. He's not very big for that. So this would be kind of interesting to see, but everybody says that poverty is a huge issue, but people don't do anything about it. We read about it in a book or whatever, so it's nice to see that she knows what she's talking about. So I had a great time, and I'm sorry you missed it, but I did take a bunch of notes for you, so that's
Thank
it.
you. Anybody else? Well, I attended last week a meeting with the Q2030 folks down at the Chamber, and the meeting was the Education and Workforce task group, and had a good discussion about what it is that the Chamber ought to work on this coming year. And it was so nice to see right up at the top was the working on foundation formula equality with school boards. They did have one suggestion that we perhaps use the local option sales tax to fund that, and the statement was made that, well, maybe robbing Peter to pay Paul is okay in this case, but I made the point that it's actually Peter robbing Peter to pay Peter, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to use our own money to pay for shortages that exist and by themselves. They need to be taken care of. Interestingly, one of the things that they didn't talk about was early childhood. They had no legislative proposals for early childhood, so I made it clear to them that, you know, the biggest bang for the buck is going to be coming from working with those pre-K through 5-year-old kids, so they included that as well. So that was the first of several meetings working with them on issues that will reflect positively on the growth and prosperity and coolness, and there's one other thing that is included in there I never can remember, of our community. So that was that. Have any board reports, Director Mayfield? Anything you did this week? No. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to Director Schneider.
Almost forgot. The music folks at Davenport North wanted me to remind the board and others that tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, the concert begins at 6, the doors open at 5 at North High School. There is a concert and cream social, kind of a fundraiser for the instrumental department, And it's a good time every year. They sell food and kind of get to see what the kids have been working on over the summer, as well as desserts and ice cream and stuff for people. So
Great. Any other?
It's outside. You'll hear it.
Any other board reports? That's it. All right, next up is upcoming events. Director DeSalvo.
Yes, thank you. August 23rd, tomorrow is the first day of school. August 29th at 5:30 p.m., the superintendent evaluation is an open session right here at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. September 5th, Labor Day holiday, we will be closed. September 7th, the policy committee meeting at 4 p.m. at the ASC right here in the executive boardroom. September 19th at 5:30, board discussion on student achievement at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. September 24th at 6 p.m., the NAACP Freedom Fund Banquet at St. Ambrose University in the Rogalski Center. September 27th at 6 p.m., Legislative Advocacy Ice Cream Social at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom right here. October 11th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. is a legislative forum at Madison School.
Excellent. Thank you, Director DeSalvo. There'll be one addition to the to our upcoming events, and that's on the 6th of September. We will be having a committee of the whole meeting. That was added at our agenda committee meeting just this afternoon. Next up is open forum, and I don't believe there are any open forum requests tonight. We always encourage the public to submit issues that are important to them. This is the board's meeting, but the board wants to be open to what it is that the community has to say. And in fact, we just reiterated that during our most recent creation of our belief statement, saying that we need to do more communication with the general public. So you can look for that in the near future. So next up is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Vice President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board accept the consent agenda as presented.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo? Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director
Yes.
DeSalvo? Director Goza?
Yes.
And Director Mayfield?
Yes.
My vote is yes, the motion passes. Next up is the approval of bills. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Vice President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the following resolution, as recommended by the administrative for the adoption of bills, resolved all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the period of August 4th, 2016 through August 17th, 2016 with the following voided checks. Check number 339760 payable to Advanced Business Systems in the amount of $111.30. This was a duplicate payment. Check number 339964 payable to Verizon Wireless in the amount of $73.11. This was an incorrect remit.
Very good. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Hayes. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes, or Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion passes. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Interestingly enough, you're not on here. But your vote has been taken. Yeah. Director Johansson hasn't joined us yet, so that motion passes as well. We'll see if we can get Director Johansson on board here. So next up is the superintendent report. Dr. Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to read the 2016-17 annual anti-bullying and anti-harassment public statement. It also ran in the newspaper today. As we begin a new school year, it is the policy of the Davenport Community School District not to discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, disability, religion, creed, age, or marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, and socioeconomic status in its educational programs and its employment practices. There's a grievance procedure for processing complaints of discrimination. If you have questions or a grievance related to this policy, please contact the district's equity coordinator, Dr. Erica Goldstone, Director of Equity and Diversity, at 1606 Brady Street, Davenport, Iowa 52803. The phone number is 563-336-3812. Any student who believes he or she has been subject to harassment, bullying, or a hostile environment based on one or more of the characteristics noted above, whether such harassment, bullying, or hostile environment is created by a fellow student, school employee, parent, guardian, or volunteer, it is encouraged to report the conduct to the building principal or associate principal first, and if still concerned, please contact Dr. Erica Goldstone, Director of Equity and Diversity, at 563-336-3805. A complaint form can be obtained from any school office or the district website, www.davenportschools.org/equity, or from the Achievement Service Center. The district has a policy in place to address complaints regarding harassment, bullying, and hostile environment, and is committed to conducting a prompt investigation into any complaints it receives. Although that's a required statement, everyone needs to know that if you feel like you have been bullied or harassed or discriminated against, then please talk to somebody as quickly as you can, someone at a level that you feel comfortable with, and that we will investigate it immediately. We want to make sure we have a safe and comfortable climate to work in and to learn in. And my last piece for my report, I have a news release from the Government Finance Officers Association. The Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting has been awarded to Davenport Community School District by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada for its comprehensive annual financial report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by government and its management. An award of financial reporting achievement has been awarded to the individual or department or agency designated by the government as primarily responsible for preparing the award-winning CAFR. This has been presented to Marcia Tangen, Chief Financial Officer. So I'd like to say thank you, Marcia, for keeping us straight, and congratulations. I asked her tonight if she could find the certificate so we could present it to her, and she's still looking for it, but congratulations. It's comforting to know.
Yes, thank you.
That completes my report.
Thank you. It's ironic that as with little money as we have, we get these kinds of accolades for managing what we do have well. Appreciate it, Marcia. Next up is action items. The first one of which is for the approval of the district medical director. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the appointment of Dr. Naomi C. Chelly, MD, as the medical director for the Davenport Community School District for the 2016-2017 school year for the annual fee of $6,300.
Thank you, Director Snyder. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director DeSalvo. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Oh.
I would like to know what the duties of this medical director will be. What's the actual performance to be done
and that you shall have.
Not right now.
Right now.
Right now? She's
Oh.
right there.
Okay.
It kind of depends on the year, but we rely on her for several things. One example would be that we have a medical directory of procedures that we follow in our schools, and that is updated on an annual basis. And sometimes it's updated more often than that if we have situations that occur. And Dr. Chelly will provide support and advice when those things occur. Joan Judding is in communication with her to make sure that the procedures and practices that we put in place are supportive of what we need to do in our health services. I'll give you another example that kind of more than supports the fact that the $6,300 that we pay her is money well spent. Perhaps you've seen recently in the news about EpiPens and the cost of those. We provide EpiPens to all of our schools so that we have those there in the event that there's some kind of an emergency with a medical or a reaction to some food or allergen. And, you know, time is of the essence in that kind of a situation. So we provide EpiPens to each of our schools. Dr. Chelly writes the prescription for those. We currently are able to get those EpiPens for free. We ordered 64 of those, which we picked up at her office that last week, and 64 at a cost of $500 a piece is $32,000. So there's a special program that we can access as a school. It's called EpiPensForSchools.com or .com. It's put on by the person who markets and distributes the EpiPen, and it allows schools to access EpiPens for free, provided that we have a provider that writes the prescription and has the prescriptions sent to their office. So that's another example of what we use our medical examiner for, or director, I should say.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Deb.
Mhm.
Motion's been made and seconded. Being no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Goza.
Yes.
Okay. My vote is yes. The motion passes. See if we've got Director Johansson on board. Can you hear us, Ralph? All right, let's go ahead with the next action item, which is the Policy Committee's recommendations for policy approval. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Vice President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board accept the policy committee's recommendation that the board approve the following: 501.11 attendance center policy change, and the deletion of 401.32 on non-school employment.
Ralph, can you hear? Somebody
Yes.
say from there. From your microphone.
He said yeah.
All right.
Okay, you're with us, Ralph?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to start this over
Yes,
so that
please.
Ralph has us, or that we have Ralph now. I move that the board accept the policy committee's recommendation and approve the following: 501.11 attendance center, deletion of 401.32 non-school employment, and the deletion of 602.21 for pilot programs.
Thank you, Director Snyder. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Director Snyder.
At the last meeting, we had talked about these policies. The first one on the attendance centers, we were basically just updating the policy to fit our practices that we engaged in last year, or the end of last year, where we were trying to collect fees by limiting transfer options until fees are paid. And there were some changes that we had made to match the current practices. And then we did, as a group, decide that we wanted to allow students to stay in a particular building if they moved, as long as there is room in that particular building, rather than force them to move to their new home school, as long as they provide their own transportation. And that change reads, will be allowed to remain at current school if space is available, attendance and discipline are not a concern, and transportation will be the responsibility of the family. If the student will be attending the new school, then it goes on to say, will be required to enroll in that new school the first day after the quarter or grading period. And that's just so that they can start that particular term in their new school, in their curriculum that they'll be taking on with the rest of their kids. And that is it for that policy. And then the last two, we had talked about deleting them and making them administrative regulations as they delve a little bit too much into operations.
I think we had a pretty good discussion during the committee of the whole on those issues as well. Any other discussion? Dr. Tate?
I'm sorry I didn't bring this up last time, and I can't get that up right now, but the portion where as long as attendance and discipline is not an issue, that's way too subjective, and I suggest that not be part of it, because it could be used for a school not to receive, saying, no, I don't want to receive them. They missed too many. I mean, how much is too many? What is a discipline issue? And I just would rather just leave it clean. We've actually started using that already because I couldn't wait. And we've got some people we've already let stay in their schools. But I just feel strongly. But I'd like to hear, Rob, if you have any feelings about that with attendance and discipline.
Years ago, we had it at the high school level, and that's one of the reasons we did away with that. It became very subjective of who were we going to say no to, and what was the line for the amount of days they had been missing. And so I would not include it either.
And that's my recommendation, that sentence or phrase be taken out.
Director Schneider?
I guess I would like to hear from any other board members. I don't have a problem with eliminating it. We put it in at the recommendation of Bill Schneeden, and when we discussed it at our, and he had a reason, and I don't remember what it was, and I apologize for that.
Would you care to make a friendly amendment to change that, to eliminate that sentence?
Actually, I would first like to ask Ralph or Linda if they remember why Bill had. There's Bill.
Right on cue.
I don't recall.
Bill Schneeden just walked into the room, so we'll give him a minute and then we will ask him.
Okay, I see it now.
The question is,
During our discussion at the policy committee, why did we decide to add that in?
I don't really remember. I think we talked about the concern of attendance, for example. In fact, this is interesting just today. I was talking to a principal today who said he has a student that wants to go to another school, and I said, well, as a matter of fact, they're talking about that this evening. He said, but you need to know he was tardy 100 times at my school, so what's it going to look like if they go to another school? And we talked about maybe we needed that leverage, that attendance has to be in line before you leave. because there's no the transportation. That's what the conversation was around. Attendance more than discipline, actually. But in the old policy, I think it did refer to both attendance and discipline, that the principal's discretion, they could revoke it.
It's the entire thing.
And Jamie, if I could speak.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Yeah, so I believe that's correct, and in spite of the challenge maybe of being consistent with something that is potentially that variable, I do recall that conversation now, and I know that we had pretty strong support for that language, that we consider it. So I guess what I would recommend is if we want to take up and debate the superintendent's recommendation to change it, if the board decides to vote on it, we would vote on it. Otherwise, you could pull it out of the motion and take it back to the policy committee.
Director DeSalvo.
Dr. Tate, would you prefer that we define, what is an attendance problem?
No, because that again is very simple. My recommendation is you take out the words attendance and discipline are not a concern. I mean, if they are a concern in one school, they're going to be a concern in another school. Are they gonna, if they stay in, if they're made to transfer, will they get worse? If it could get worse. And remember, we're doing this, we can't say it, but we're doing this for our low socioeconomic students. That's why we're doing it. Now, anyone can do it because of the way we have to say it. But to me, it's bend over backwards for anything we can do and give them every chance we would. And again, if it's bad in the school they want to be in, what's it going to be in the school they don't want to be in?
Thank you.
So,
Director
Mr. Vice
Gray.
President, whoops, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm okay with the friendly amendment.
Do I need to pull this out then to?
Would the policy committee like to have further review?
I would rather not. I think this is important, and mobility problems can start quickly, and I would like to address this tonight, and I don't feel that removing that would be an issue, but I would like the board to discuss it, and I would like to pull it out so that we can do that.
Okay. So the recommendation then is to take out the phrase attendance and discipline are not a concern. That would be the change to this policy. Any discussion by board members on pulling that phrase out?
So,
Director Snyder?
Do we need to separate these policies before we continue? Or can we discuss one without pulling it out?
Well, this is probably more than a friendly amendment would carry, I would suspect. So yes, probably best to entertain this policy and the two deletions by themselves.
That's what I thought.
So would you like to amend your motion?
I would. I would like the motion to read, I move that the board accept the policy committee's recommendation to approve the following. 1, deletion of 401.32 non-school employment and deletion of 602.21 pilot programs.
Okay. So the motion has been made to delete sections 401.32 and what was the second?
602.21 pilot programs.
602.21. Is there a second?
Second.
So the motion has been made and seconded to then modify the motion to take out the deletion of sections 401.32 and 60.21. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Goza?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Johansson? Director Johansson, are you with us?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Okay. My vote is yes, so that amendment carries. So we will now vote on the original. Why do you guys do this to me? I don't like it. We will now vote on the original motion, except that we will now consider it to be a vote only on attendance centers 501.11. Deleting the section on deleting 401.32 and 602.21. Director Snyder?
Mr. Vice President,
Mr. Snyder.
I move that the board accept the policy committee's recommendation and approve the following 501.11 attendance centers.
Motion's been made to approve policy 501.11. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. Did I hear you say that sentence? I did.
We haven't gotten there yet. We have
We're
to
gonna-
make the amendment
We're
after
going to
we
get
make
there
the
next.
motion.
We'll get there next after we approve this.
I thought you had to do it as a
I think we'll move forward with that.
You have to do the amendments first.
So the motion then to amend to make this motion only 501.11 was made by Director Snyder, seconded by Director Hayes. Any discussion?
Yes, I'm operating at a deficit. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to be recognized. Mr. Vice President.
Yes, go ahead, President Johansson.
So, can you explain, I don't quite understand exactly what the motion is and what the amendment is. What, could you just tell me, because I don't know.
Sure, we're moving through this. We moved the original motion as written. Then there was an amendment by Director Snyder to delete sections 401.32 and 602.21. Those were then deleted. The board approved that. We're now moving the original motion to approve 501.11 as currently written without the deletion of sections 401.32 and 602.21. Following which we will have a vote on the changed language. But this vote is on 501.11 by itself as currently provided to the board.
So I'm unable to see all this, but when you just cite the references, I don't know what it means. Could you clarify that for me?
You're talking about the deletions?
Yes.
Yeah, the deletions were, there were two policies that the board talked about during the committee of the whole session that we thought should be deleted and made administrative regulations because they really didn't fit as policy. So those are the two deletions that we voted to. That will be another motion on those deletions.
Okay, thank you.
Because those are separate from this motion. So we have then a motion on 501.11 as originally written with the deletion of the 401.32 and 602.21. So we have the motion by Director Snyder, seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any further discussion on that? Director Snyder.
Now I would like to officially make my amendment to remove the line that says attendance and discipline are not a concern. So that would actually read, will be allowed to remain at current school if space is available, and transportation will be the responsibility of the family.
Okay. You know, we could make this simpler and I think just move on that amendment rather than voting on the previous amendment, but I think it makes sense to go ahead. Director Snyder then has moved that we approve policy 501.11 with the deletion of the phrase attendance and discipline are not a concern. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Hayes seconds. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Director
I'd like to hear
Mayfield.
the clarification again as to
Sure.
why that should be eliminated.
I'll leave that to Director Snyder.
And I will defer that to Dr. Tate.
Attendance and discipline are very subjective, and it'll look different to one principal, and it'll be different to one principal than another. Secondly, I think that it will disadvantage students who already have issues with getting to school or being disciplined. The point of this is to try to help our students who are low SES, and it's for those reasons. And again, if you've got poor attendance or a discipline issue in a school that you want to be in, that you're trying to stay in, if we're forcing you out of that neighborhood to another school, I can't understand where it would be any better.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Goza.
So now we're just voting on you amending what you're saying in there. Is that what we're doing now?
The
Correct.
current motion by Director Snyder is that we approve policy
You don't have to tell me the whole thing. I just need to know if that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's exactly, well, I want to clarify it because I know it's confusing. What we're voting now on is the approval of policy number 501.11 with the change, deleting the phrase attendance and discipline are not a concern. Also, what we're doing is we've also, of course, deleted the two deletions, 401.32 and 602.21, which we will vote on later.
Okay.
We already did that. We already voted on that. We separated them.
We separated them. So we have approved that deletion. Okay. So then what we're voting on is simply 501.1.
Well, see, now I'm lost because I didn't know that we approved that. I thought we were just separating them and doing this one, and then we were going to do those two.
And then we voted.
I just thought we voted to pull those two out because I would have voted no for that one, but okay.
So is it clear as mud where we're at right now? Director Mayfield?
Well, my only question on that, because you were talking about an amendment, you wanted to pass it first and then do an amendment, so you're changing the language without an amendment, basically,
That's what I thought.
to 5011.
Clarify that?
I heard you say that we were going to pass it as it is and then change by amendment to the correct language, which would be eliminating that sentence. Are you taking that sentence out right now and you're going to pass it? Which
Yes.
one is it?
That is the motion. We're going to go ahead and vote on 501.11 at this time as written, with the exception of the statement, attendance and discipline are not a concern.
So that's
we're
being
gonna-
taken
We're
out.
going to vote on that motion,
Okay.
deleting that phrase. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Vice President.
Mr. Johansson?
So, can you read, because I'm trying to imagine what this policy does, and I understand the intent, but if we take out that section on attendance and discipline, how does the actual policy read? I mean, at least that section right around those, like right before that.
Well, let me read the whole thing without that section for you.
Okay.
If a student moves from one school attendance area to another during the school year, the student will be allowed to remain at current school if space is available, and transportation will be the responsibility of the family. If the student will be attending a new school, they will be required to enroll in the new school the first school day after a quarter or grading period. So the way it currently reads, if a student moves from one school attendance area to another during the school year, the student will be allowed to remain at the current school if space is available. Attendance and discipline are not a concern, and transportation will be the responsibility of the family. So that's being changed to delete. Attendance and discipline are not a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion was made by Director Snyder, seconded by Director Hayes, to change policy number 501.11 to delete the oft-quoted phrase, attendance and discipline are not a concern. We've had discussion. At this point, I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Johansson?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. The motion passes. Thank you. All right. That is the last action item for consideration. Next up is board requests. Are there any board requests tonight?
It's listed as number 9, board requests.
What did she say about that?
Yeah, she thought, you're right.
Okay. Any board request? Director Goza.
I have a question. So I voted yes for the deletion of the two, because that was the ones I was going to vote no for. So now, because I was confused how we voted, looks as though I voted yes. Is that correct? I thought we just voted to take those two out and vote on them later.
So, okay. So your misunderstanding was then that we had voted to delete those previously. Okay. I'm sorry for that. It was a very confusing process, and I'm sorry that it became more convoluted than it probably needed to be. Board requests. Any board requests? Well, I have one. I haven't written it down yet, but I will, and that's one of the board belief statements dealt with the fact that some of our community, perhaps we believe, would like to talk to us, but they don't. Either they're not capable, or for whatever reason they've decided not to. So I would like the agenda committee to consider our moving out on what we talked about with our belief statements to talk with the community. And I thought that might be an issue that we would talk with the community about. Also, we're going to be talking about student achievement with Lloyd Kilmer on the 9th of September. The possibility is that we may need to talk to our community about what they want in terms of student achievement as well before we start making decisions on our own. So my board request will be to have the agenda committee take a look at the possibility of an agenda item about where the board is on meeting with the public on those issues that we discussed during our belief statements. I'll write that up in a little bit. Okay, no other board requests? Then we are down to discussion items, the first of which is update on the network of community school partners. Dr. Tate.
John and team, you're on.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. Share some information about our Network for Community and School Partnerships group. We do a lot of good work. Your reference to the community and seeking feedback. We get feedback all the time from our community partners, and we're here to share that information with you. I'm joined tonight by two of our very treasured partners in the community, Deb Gustafson, the Executive Director for Child Care and Family Services with the Scott County Family Y, and Jennifer Best, Youth and Families Educator with Iowa State University, Scott County Extension and Outreach, also our NCSP Chair. And they're going to offer some insights and observations in just a little bit. I prepared some slides for you, but I see we're not powered up. But in your board docs, you have this entire presentation. So if you'd like to look at it at your leisure, in the interest of time, we can just go ahead. It's very short, 5 or 6 slides, and I'll just walk through them with you right now. The purpose, really, as we see it, of the Network for Community and School Partnerships group is to strengthen community engagement with our schools to improve and enrich student achievement. Very reflective of our district mission that deals with student achievement being enriched by our diverse community. So there's a direct connection there for you in our purpose as a group. NCSP is composed of currently 78 individuals representing over 40 community and faith-based organizations. It's a long-standing group going back to, I believe, the mid-1980s. So it's a long-standing group formerly known as the Community Education Advisory Council, now known as the Network for Community and School Partnerships. We meet monthly throughout the year here at the ASC on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. All are welcome to attend. We have an agenda every month. We'll be kicking off the day after tomorrow on Wednesday, August 24th with our first meeting. That is going to be a presentation by Tricia Shannon with Community Action of Eastern Iowa and Tammy Conrad with Children's Villages to discuss early childhood, some of the changes and updates in the community that we feel need to be communicated with our partners and in the community. Our membership also finds its way to many of our stakeholder committees. We have members of our NCSP group that serve on our superintendent's committees for Achievement Gap, our Poverty Committee, as well as our Graduation Advocacy Committee. We also have an out-of-school time committee that has been standing for a number of years now, of which these two treasured partners also serve. That is centered around our after-school and summer program, Stepping Stones, but then also other organizations serve on that committee, like Boys and Girls Club and others, Friendly House, that have out-of-school time programs as well. And then we also have ongoing network communications that are conducted as needed. If information comes to my attention, I'm ready to share that, whether that comes from our own district or externally with community partners. I'm ready to share that with partners. And conversely, information that comes to us from the community, I'm on the ready to share that with pertinent and relevant staff within our school district to raise awareness around a particular issue or concern. Some of the principles of Network Community School Partnerships and really around community education as a concept in general. Institutional responsiveness. We're here as a group to serve the schools and the common good in the community. We have such a broad range of community partners serving everything from not only education, but healthcare, mental health services, early childhood, all kinds of range of professional endeavors. So we serve the common good, but we're really here to serve the schools and impact learning. We believe in the efficient use of resources. There's a lot of folks in our community trying to do good work, and it is very helpful when we align our work, both our physical, financial, and human resources, to reduce duplication in the community. In times like this where resources are scant and not enough, we need to be smart about how we collaborate and work together. Integrated service delivery is about expanding access and availability of needed services, working together and collaborating. Not just coordinating, not just cooperating, but collaborating shared engagement, shared resources. We hope that that work results in expanded access and availability. So when we look at our community schools model, for example, that exists in a number of our school buildings, there are services right there in the school that parents and families can access, where they might have to run around to 3 to 4 different places in the community where those services are not available in a school-based setting. Finally, I like to share the lifelong learning angle of this. We're all lifelong learners, and we call it twinkle to wrinkle. So in other words, there really isn't a point along the continuum of life in which we stop learning. So the Network for Community School Partnerships tries to address that by creating opportunities for adult literacy or engagement with advanced learning, whatever that might be that is needed in the community. We try to be responsive to that. Finally, our NCSP outreach. We're here to provide support and act as a resource group for the school board and the superintendent's office. In past years, when the board was considering writing a new vision statement, for example, Directors Kluhl and Directors Johansson came to our group and had a good talk session about the vision as they made their tour around the community, and I hope that the NCSP group gave you meaningful feedback. And then, of course, whenever Dr. Tate needs to share information or would like to gather information, we always welcome his requests as well. We also are in a position to assist schools with partnerships that promote meaningful family and community engagement. Our schools are busy places, and they have a tremendous amount of responsibility to their students and families. So our first charge is to do no harm. We don't want to get in the way of that learning, but we believe, as the mission statement articulates, that we are better when we approach and engage the community in supporting that learning. And then finally, we serve as a point of contact for community and faith-based organizations that are supporting youth and families, so that's coming in the other way. Often we have partners who have ideas and resources and want to help and contribute, and the NCSP group and the office that I work in serves as a point of contact for that feedback. So I would like to introduce to you our two guests tonight, Jennifer Best and Deb Gustafson, and I think they'd like to share some insights and observations with you.
Hi, I'm Deb Gustafson. I'm the Executive Director of Child Care for the Scott County Family Y. I serve on this committee as well as the Local School Improvement Advisory Committee and the Preschool Committee, and I'm delighted to be here to speak with you tonight. I just wanted to share that this NCSP allows the school district to connect with community partners, gives you an opportunity as a district to see what we're doing in the community, for us to brainstorm together and work together. It allows our community partners an access to get involved within the district. So sometimes you may have a need that we're not even aware of, and it gives us an opportunity to work together as a team. And finally, it allows community partners to connect with each other and collaborate. This collaboration makes our community stronger, and I thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Jennifer Best from Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm the chair of this committee. I think there are a couple of really important things that we do. One is it allows us to learn about what it is that's going on in the district so that we can support those things. We take we talk almost every single month about our responsibility to make sure that our families that we work with and other partners in the community really understand what's actually going on. In a district of this size and in a community of this size, it's very easy for facts to get interpreted in ways that that's not really exactly what happened, or that's not exactly what the intent was. And so one of the really important things that we do is make sure we really understand this is the vision of how things are supposed to look, so that families really understand, oh, let us help you understand why this looks the way that it does. Let us help you interpret that or get to the right person or those kinds of things. Because we sometimes can interface with our students' families in ways that might be challenging for schools to do. And so that's really important. The other big thing that NCSP focuses on is making sure that whatever initiatives the district is working on are things that we might have resources or knowledge that we can support. It's really important to us that teachers can spend their time doing what their expertise is, and principals spend time doing what their expertise is, and we can help facilitate that by those issues that are interfering with the learning process really being an organization that says, oh, we have partnerships and we have resources and we have programs that can support those issues and mediate them. We've worked on many projects over the years, and one of my favorite ones is the community school learning guides, which I'm sure some of you have seen. They're those little colored booklets that are about this big that talk about, well, what are the things that we would expect in kindergarten? What are the things that we expect in first grade? What are the things that we would expect in second grade? That was an idea that came out of NCSP several years ago, and we worked on that for about 6 months because it was something that agencies were saying, you know, we really want to help students in the learning process, but we're not really sure, as we're working with families and students, how to make that happen. We don't know what it is that the expectations are at each one of those grade levels. And so we said, oh, that's a project we can work on, and we brought a bunch of teachers together and administrators and worked on that and had those printed, and the district is still using those and updates them. So it's just an example of how can we help with the mission of bringing community to the school and making sure that the mission, vision, and values of the school district is something that's embedded in our work as community agencies, and that trickles down to families so they're well educated about what it is that's going on. So this is a really great committee, long-standing, and we're so fortunate to have so many community partners that call, you know, Davenport Schools our home school. So thank you for having us.
So there you have it. Any questions, any observations that you'd care to make? We're certainly happy to hear it.
Thank you all for the presentation. Board members, questions, comments? You know, you're all not quiet when it comes to making amendments. Linda.
If a family needed the services, what would be the first steps? Walk me through that process. What would it take to get what they need?
Well, certainly we'd always recommend the first point of contact be to speak to someone at the school. They might have some direct intervention that's available there at the school, but we're always available. We have a number of staff that work in our schools that work with our office and with NCSP directly, for example, but not limited to our family involvement liaisons, school counselors. We've got Families Matters staff in some of our community schools buildings that are right on the edge and taking the pulse of the needs of those families. So if it can't be addressed at that building level, then certainly we're available to come in there with additional supports if needed and requested.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts? Director DeSalvo.
Well, it sounds like you're doing great things for our community, so thank you for the service that you provide, because it does make a difference. We saw a video tonight, and I don't know if you caught any of that, but it was those things just make you think and make my head go 100 miles an hour, and how can we make this better? And one thing that stands out to me, and we talked a lot tonight about transportation and parents that can't get to the school to talk to a counselor or a teacher, or that transportation seems to be a big topic right now. Can you comment a little bit about that?
I'd like to ask Jennifer Best to come up and talk about that. She works in our in an advisory and supervisory capacity for our Family Matters staff at our community schools.
Thank you.
You're right, that is absolutely an issue. One of the things that we spent a lot of time this summer doing, and do it throughout the school year as well, is doing home visits. And sometimes that is at a family's home, and sometimes we meet at a neutral place. It's the family's option. We have gone to parents' workplaces as well. It kind of depends on what those circumstances are. Sometimes it's about a concern that the parent comes to us with. Sometimes it is something that the school has a concern about that they want to have a discussion with a family about. Often, a school staff member is participating in that process, but not always. It kind of depends on what the circumstances are and what the relationship between that particular school and a parent is. Sometimes we can get some things done that are difficult in other ways. Sometimes it's more about paperwork that's the barrier. Sometimes it's more about meetings. We also have some opportunities to arrange transportations with local cab companies, those kinds of things, through some funding sources that come as a part of our full service effort. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things that everything is an individual case, but we know that home visitation is definitely a best practice in the educational setting, and it's something that's really time consuming for school people to get away from the building, and so we're more than happy to do those things and make those visits. And families really seem to appreciate saying, you know, you don't have to come to us, we'll come to you. You know, your family is important to us, your situation is important to us, we want to support you in where you are. And so that has worked out pretty well for us. Does that answer your question?
It did. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for the support that you're providing. It is wonderful.
Director Snyder.
I've got a couple questions. My first question is probably fairly subjective, depending on who you ask, but do you guys feel like you're making progress to where you are able to work proactively with people versus reactively?
With individual groups?
With families, with different programs, with just with anything that you guys are achieving?
Yeah, we are pretty intentional about the way that we set up our agendas, for example, throughout the school year. Our focus is on those student supports. A lot of our agency folks are working on those matters that address barriers to learning, getting some of that stuff out of the way so teachers can do what they do in the classroom. So if I meet with Director Schneckloth, for example, and we discuss what's on the agenda for his team in a given school year, then that's going to help inform some of the agendas that we set throughout the year. And then that can also key in, as Jen said earlier, the discussions that we have around the table when it comes time to plan and collaborate actual programming activities.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I ask is you see so many like government type agencies that mean well, but they're working reactively, and by then sometimes you're trying to fix already something rather than warding it off from the get-go.
Yeah. I would add too that the composition of our NCSP group is very much those folks that are working directly with people. It's not so much always the executive directors, although sometimes it is, but it's those people that are really engaged, as Jen said earlier, working directly with parents, directly with families. And sometimes it's a really productive thing to have those folks around the table as opposed to the executive levels who have a lot of information they're dealing with. This is good conversation that occurs every month, and it's ground level talking to people.
Good.
So that allows us to be very proactive because we're hearing directly from the people that we're interested in working with.
Good. My last question is, we end one of our mission statements with the phrase, what if? What is, for your committee, your big what if? If you had this, you could achieve this. I mean, what is your big obstacle, I guess?
I think we're beginning to approach one of the greater visions that we've had for a number of years now in terms of our community schools effort. The philosophy behind community schools being that it really does take the resources of the community aligned effectively to address those barriers to learning so student learning can be impacted in a positive way. The community schools model is a beautiful expression of that. You've got a number of organizations bringing resources to the table, working collaboratively behind the scenes and with building administration and teachers to address those needs. So when I see what if, I say what if we were in a situation in which the needs of every student in each of our schools were able to be articulated in such a way, clearly enough, with people who can act upon those needs, that we wouldn't have the the stop gaps, we wouldn't have the breakdowns in communication, we wouldn't have parents who are desperate, seeking alternatives to our school district. This is the place they would want to be because those needs are being addressed directly in the schools.
Well, that was a good answer. I think you even got a few nods from behind you. So did he address it to your liking, ladies?
And if you'd like to share anything, please do.
I guess, John, I would just say that, you know, when you talk about what Donna Biko had to say, that some of our families have had difficult experiences in our schools, and they're uncomfortable approaching our schools and coming into them. Not because of our fault, but because of things that have happened. And so many times our community partners are those people who work with the children and the families outside of the schools. And so we have a special, a different, a non-educational relationship with them where we can see other needs. And together as a team, we can work together to solve their most immediate obstacle so that they can reach their potential. And that's what this is all about.
Well, thank you guys. This committee goes right to the core of what we're working for and getting out with the community and, you know, not only making better students, but a better community. So I applaud you guys in your efforts.
Thank you.
Dr. Mayfield.
John, it's really refreshing to hear what you're doing. You know, we took a trip not too long ago to Children's Zone. And I guess it's sort of a hidden fact in our district that some of the things that they were doing there, we too are doing it.
Sure.
We haven't really talked about it publicly as much. I think your presentation sort of shows the different partnerships that are going on in the community as well with the schools. So it's refreshing to hear that that's happening. As you know, there's always more to be done no matter how much we get done. And I think we're headed in the right direction. Finding those little areas that we can impact and getting the people to the right place in the right contacts. That's really what it's about. So it sounds great what I'm hearing. I applaud the group that you're working with to make that happen.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Goza.
Since Director Johansson's here, not here to ask any numbers questions, I will. How many individuals and families would you say you guys have helped over the course of this?
Well, that's a very, very difficult question to answer. Maybe Jen can talk about families that they're serving with ISU through Families Matter in our community schools, and Deb can probably give you some insight on programming through the YMCA as well. But we have so many partners impacting so many lives, it's very difficult to answer that question directly, but we have some good resources right here.
Thanks, John. So I guess it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it as all of the Davenport families that every one of our agencies serves, that's kind of an interesting question. We've never thought about it before because everybody kind of goes back to their agency and does their thing, and we all have our own separate ways of calculating that. I can answer that question, though, from those partnerships that are directly in the school buildings. So we have 4 different agencies that provide school-based therapy services, and a full caseload for a full-time therapist is usually considered to be about 40. Some buildings do not have a full-time therapist, they share, so there might be maybe a therapist in one building 3 days a week and another building 2 days a week. We can kind of conceptualize those numbers that way. In terms of full-service community schools, we have, in the out-of-school time component of that, we have about 60 kids, sometimes more than that, per night. So that's that number of families. In terms of our family support and education services, we saw about 300 families last year with about 450 different needs. About 60% of those families, we resolved whatever their issue was. The other 40% are families with ongoing issues. We are actually just about finished with our 15-16 year-end report, which I will send to Dr. Tate and our executive directors, and then they can certainly pass that along to you all, and you can look at what kind of progress we've made. We do have a mechanism that it's called a measure of how families are doing, and it's a rubric that we use to track change over time. It measures two things: the reduction in risk factors in families and an increase in protective factors. And we know that if we can get those two things done, then when students are in the classroom, they're more in the game. And we know that, I've said for years to the board and everybody in this building that, we have fabulous teachers in this district. We have awesome facilities. We've got great technology, great curriculum. If we're having issues, I think it has to do with things outside the building. I really believe that. And I think that these kinds of efforts are the things that are going to start to chip away at some of those issues that are really interfering with the academic progress that we're trying to make, and we're starting to see it. It's hard to figure out how to measure it, but we're getting there. We're creating models for how to really get at what kind of progress we're making so that we can better answer a question like that, because it's a lot more complicated than measuring reading scores. Trying to figure out, is a family doing better, is kind of hard. But we're working on, good ways to measure that so that we can put it into formats that are easily digestible. So that report will be coming out to you soon, so that you can kind of take a look at, this is our current conceptualization of how to characterize that progress.
Thank you.
It's also a hard question for the Scott County family. Why? I will tell you that we served over 1,000 students in the Davenport Community School District last year. I have the statewide voluntary preschool program. We served 37 students last year. We will serve 57 this year. I have a program that is called the Solutions Program. Last year it worked at 3 of the Title I schools. This year we will be focusing on Monroe and Smart, where we will have a staff person in the school directly working with Tier 2 students, hoping to impact them, overcome their most immediate obstacle, get them back on track and back to being those Tier 1 students. We also have what is called Quad City Scholars, which is a program that helps students prepare for college, taking them on college visits, ACT prep, those types of things. Both last school year and this school year, we worked with the Davenport Community School District to offer summer school programs. We offer scholarships. We also offer child care assistance so that no one is turned away for an inability to pay a fee. And then we infuse that with learning objectives to help offset the summer learning loss that is impactful to all of our students. And that's just my programs. That doesn't include the summer programs that are run out of the North and West YMCA, or the things that are done at Camp Abe Lincoln, including lots of reading programs that we do, and then of course programs that are directly related to teaching the YMCA core values, which very closely align with what the Davenport Community Schools do. We take great pride in making a difference in our community, and any time that we can step up and assist our community, we're happy to do so, and we enjoy being a part of the Davenport schools. In fact, the Stepping Stones program at Eisenhower Elementary School is over-enrolled. They're licensed and they can take no more children, and so we received a phone call asking us to assist, and we are opening a program at the downtown Davenport Y in conjunction with Eisenhower Elementary School. We'll be providing transportation and making sure that children have after-school opportunities, of course infused with educational opportunities and some swimming, and I think that's the hook.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, though, Director Gosa. I think that's a good thing for us to discuss. I appreciate that.
If Ralph would have been here, he would have been grilling in. So,
Ralph, are you still with us? You want to follow up with that?
Yes, I am here. It's just, no, I have my phone on mute so that I don't interrupt anything. And normally, Director Gosa is right that I would have some appropriate questions, but I haven't been able to pin anything down. I've just been listening to a lot of good words, and I appreciate all the work that you, Deb, and John, and it sounded like Jen was in there too, but I appreciate everything you're doing. And I'll just leave it at that.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess if there's something a big picture that I get from this, it's a community of compassionate people that are surrounding our kids and saying we're there.
Catchers in their eye.
Yes, exactly. And so it's like that old statement that John Border used to say, and I guess a number of people have, is that, you know, if you want to make a change, you have to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. So we want them to be someplace, and sometimes we drag and we do things that alienate kids, I think. But when we meet them where they're at, and I think of a program that Jen Best did with early childhood. It's called Parenting Inside Out. She started it with ISU. And basically working with fathers in prison before they get out, knowing that they're coming out to young children, preparing them before they actually get back with those kids so they know what to do. And so this is just an extension of that. I mean, I looked at the master list here of people that are involved. It's incredible. But it is putting that nexus together of, as you have said, helping people understand where they fit in the process so that we're not all there trying to overhelp and overrunning these children, but doing it in an organized fashion. And I just can't say enough, John, Deb, and Jen, for the efforts that you put in to make this happen. I wish we were reading about this in the Quad City Times once a week rather than a lot of the stuff that's in there, because this is changing our culture. This is changing things for our kids, and this is what's going to make a difference for all of us. We can't do it in education alone ourselves, but working together we can move mountains. So thank you all so very much.
We're here, we're ready, we're a resource for you. Just let us know what we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Next up is RFP for solar power. Dr. Tate.
Not me. Mike?
You know that we did publish an RFP asking for proposals to install solar power at district schools. We had 2 proposals covering a total of 11 schools. One proposer offered to do 2. Another proposer offered to do 10, I believe it was. I wanted to show an example of what this might look like at Buffalo, and I'll talk a little bit more about Buffalo because it's one of the ones where the proposal was clearly less money per kilowatt hour than we're currently paying. But the blue area there on the right of the track is the amount of ground that would be taken up. It's currently grass, some used for soccer and other things. So in order to install arrays large enough as would be required in this case, my recollection it was around 400 kilowatts, would take up a lot of ground. That would be fenced in and so forth, but it's one of the things that you'd have to take into consideration. I'll mention one of the other schools that was proposed was Eisenhower. And there's a very active soccer groups at Eisenhower, and should you take up that much ground with these arrays, it would definitely impact the use of those fields by soccer at Eisenhower. I will say, though, that the rate proposed was actually higher than is currently being paid at Eisenhower. Some are also proposed to be roof-mounted. That can be done. There's a little bit of work that has to be done about the structural capacity and things like that. These panels are not particularly heavy, so the actual dead load is usually not an issue. But they do have to be taken off to re-roof and things like that. The life of a roof generally is 20 to 30 years. The proposal for these is 20 years, and if you put them up on a 15-year-old roof, why, you'd have to take into consideration you may have to take them down, put them back when you re-roof 15 years into the program. The way the situation currently works is it is the 30% federal tax credit, some other state of Iowa incentives, accelerated depreciation on the equipment, that makes the whole model, the financial model, work at all. The investor, a private investor, would build these things, then they sell us the power for 20 years. At the end of the 20 years, for some nominal fee, we would buy the system and own it, is the way these things get set up. But it's the current tax credits and other incentives that really make the financial transaction work. The idea is the investor builds the array and sells the power to the district at a lower rate than the utility rate. Currently, in most situations, I'll show a spreadsheet later, the proposals that we got both were for 9 cents per kilowatt hour. One, the smaller one that proposed on 2 schools, also proposed that they would sell at 6.75 cents per kilowatt hour with a 3% annual escalator. So the 6.75 is starting to get competitive with what we would be paying Mid-American, but you have to then take into consideration it's a 20-year proposal, and you would need to believe that the regulated utility rates would increase. I'll show a slide talking about that in a moment. I mentioned both offerers were at 9 cents per kilowatt hour for the straight. One offered a 6.75 with the 3% escalator. One of the things that we have to do in this analysis that makes it much more complicated is we, in most cases, pay 2 different rates for Mid-American, a summer rate and a winter rate. Then the rate that we pay is stepped, so that we pay, in this particular case, 9.87 cents for the first 5,000 kilowatt hours, then 8.9 cents for the next over 5,000 kilowatt hours, then a surcharge of 1.79 cents for every kilowatt hour over 40,000. And so you can see that for each school, each month and each year, the net average kilowatt hour rate that we pay may vary because you have to add all of those things together. These transactions are proposed to be 20 years, the power purchase agreement. We would have to take into account a number of unknown factors, including predicted utility rate cost escalation. We would have to take into account changes in PV technology over time. The question I think the board asked in work session was, if these things get more and more efficient, would it make sense to wait a year or 5 years or something as the equipment becomes more efficient? What we don't know is what the tax credit structure might be in 5 years and so forth. That could end at any time. So what we can only analyze is what the offering is today. You could see this on your computer screen probably much more. We have netted out the average annual cents per kilowatt hour by building after we've removed service charges and things like that that would be ongoing, whether or not we had a PV system there, because we would still have the utility connection. We would still be buying some of the energy from the local utility whenever our demand exceeded the generating capacity of the PV system that we had. So we would be maintaining those service charges, and they vary depending upon which rate we're paying and the account. This is from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. They project that nationally, over the next roughly 40 years, that electricity will increase at a rate of about 1.9% per year. And there are, of course, other sources and other predictions that can be found that might be higher or lower. But the U.S. Energy Information Administration's purpose is to provide unbiased, objective information. So we believe that's a reliable source of information. So the cost model, Buffalo is the only school where the 9 cents is actually significantly less than we're currently paying. The rate there is 10 cents plus service charges and some other things. So if you modeled at 9 cents, the proposed price per kilowatt hour, Or if you modeled at the 6.75 cents plus the 3% annual escalator, over the 20 years, you end up almost exactly in the same place. The annual savings at Buffalo would be about $11,000 a year. In year 20, if you accepted the assumptions about the increase in the regulated utility rates, the annual savings would be about $19,000 a year. In year 21, the entire bill, the roughly $100,000 a year, would start to accrue as savings when you were no longer paying the 9 cents an hour to the investor who built the system. So those are kind of the numbers, and the situation, I think, as we see it today, is it could make sense if you accept the predictions for increases in the utility rates to proceed at Buffalo with either the 9 cents or the 6.75. And it's probable that that could be negotiated a little bit once you actually sat down with one of the proposers and tried to get to making the actual deal. We have not yet met with John Mueller. We expected that his advice would come into play should we actually wish to proceed by presenting the power purchase agreement and really getting into the details of the financial transaction at that time. We don't think that we would proceed with either of the deals that were offered as they were offered, and that we would actually have to do some additional negotiation and answer some additional questions before there was actually an opportunity to present a proposal to the board for consideration. But we do think that the Buffalo one is the only one that makes financial sense as we speak. The other thing I should mention is one of the offering firms who offered the larger package said that they believed that for a variety of reasons, if we aggregated some schools so that the investor's total investment exceeded the $10 million mark, that would change their entire model in a manner that would allow them to significantly, and they didn't say exactly what significantly is, but significantly lower the proposed rate of 9 cents to something less than that. When we look at the rates we're paying Mid-American, which is most of our accounts, we would need a rate in the 7.5 to 8 cents to get to anywhere near what is competitive with Mid-American. And we would also need for the board to believe that there would be escalation in Mid-American's rates over the 20 years. All of that would have to be taken into account. So in order to get to a larger recommendation than simply trying to make a proposal for Buffalo that made sense to bring to you, it would require some more work with perhaps an additional, a different request for proposals that would look to aggregate a larger load in order to get past the $10 million mark and see if they were actually able to present a competitive rate once you got to that point. So that's all I had to present, and I was interested in your thoughts on where you thought this might go.
Thank you, Mike. Questions from the board? Director DeSalvo.
I have several, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Who's the provider in Buffalo?
The city of Buffalo. It's a municipal utility.
Okay, thank you. I knew that, but for the record. Do we pay taxes since we're a school? What are our taxes? So what I'm getting at is they're saying we're going to get a tax break, but we don't pay taxes, do we?
No, the way that would work is the investor builds the system.
Okay.
They get the tax credit. They get the accelerated depreciation.
Okay.
They own the system for 20 years, and they sell us the power during that time.
Okay.
The sale of that power pays off the system pays the investor back their money.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the 20 years, we get the system, basically.
Right. So the tax credit doesn't come to us; it goes to
It
the
goes
investor.
to the investor.
Sure. Okay. So when we produce our own power, and we produce too much,
There
Where does it-
is a system of credits,
Yes.
both with Mid-American and Buffalo, I don't think has ever anticipated this. They don't have that set up for what's referred to as net metering, where when we produce more than we use, those electrons go back out onto the grid, and we get a credit for them back from the utility.
have you researched the existing pending legislation on those credits?
No, I have not.
Okay. Okay.
And that would be a part of the advice that we would get from
Sure.
Mr. Mueller, who
Who's that?
John Mueller with Iowa School Finance.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know that was so. Okay. Can I comment on things that I know, or do I have to ask questions only? Okay. Well, there's things that I know, but I don't know if I can share them or if I have to ask questions to get it on the record. Okay. So Mid-American Energy has not raised rates and didn't for almost 15, 20 years. And as that worked, there were 3 companies that merged together that became Mid-American Energy. The one on the east side of the state actually was paying higher rates than the central and western side of the state. So with that recent rate change, we're trying to make those rates equal, which means where we are now on the eastern side of the state, our rates are actually going to go down. So those are things that I would highly recommend we do more research on, because that is coming with these rate changes that have come along. So I think that I would like that investigated before we make a final
Yes, the rate
decision.
equalization
Yes.
case, or
Yes.
as it's referred to, we are aware of.
Good, because it's a big factor that I would like to make sure we consider. At the end of the 20 years, this will be my last question. Do we know maintenance on these things? Have they projected any kind of?
Yes, there's an annual maintenance cost projection that was included in the RFPs.
Okay.
And my recollection only, is that Buffalo, it was $3,600 a year or something to that effect.
Okay, that's good. I think that's all for now. Thank you very much.
Director Mayfield.
I was here 20 years that the district would own the system, but would it be somewhat adequate by that time? I mean, 20 years is a long time in terms of technology.
Yes, it's likely that in 20 years there would be much more efficient systems, but it's also likely that this system would continue to be functional and producing the same amount of power. So now we would be getting all of that power for 0 cents per kilowatt hour rather than 9 cents per kilowatt hour.
Providing that it would
Providing that it was
last
still
another 20 years.
Precisely.
Hopefully. Thank you.
This is all pretty foreign to me, so I'm gonna, I got one, or actually a couple questions, but one is, I'm assuming the rate we pay at the buildings is a volume-based rate?
Well, yes. As I said, in most cases, the rate, there's a different rate for summer and a different rate for winter, and then there are different kilowatt hour thresholds at which if we use more than 5,000, then it goes down a little bit. If we use more than 40,000, it goes down a little bit, but there's a surcharge added to that. So it's requires, the bills are pretty complicated, actually. Most people, if you read your electric bill, it's like your cell phone bill. It's got 47 lines for different taxes and fees and things like that.
Yeah, I can't decipher either one, so. I guess my question is, if we're not buying as much, would we then be paying a higher rate for what we do buy? Therefore cutting into our quote-unquote savings.
Well, yes, because the way these rates are structured, it's, I'm looking at rate GD. The first 200 hours is 7.1 cents. The next 200 is 6.1. So if we're producing more of our own, the excess that we buy would be at the higher rate for lower consumption. And that's why it would be important for the purchase power agreement to be at a rate that was at or below that initial threshold rate of Mid-Americans in order for the whole transaction to make any sense.
I'm probably one of the biggest skeptics in the world for stuff like this, because I can almost guarantee that the motives behind the proposals are not to help the school district, but to help that proposer become a fat cat. And I guess if it's such a good, prosperous thing, why wouldn't we buy the equipment ourselves and cut out an investor?
Well, simply because we would have to look at our long-range capital money plans, and these can be upwards of $1 million for each installation. And we'd have to take that out of the 19 or so million a year that we're getting in SAVE and PEPAL funds, and delay, defer, or delete other projects that we have planned.
But in the end, we're still paying it back to them, plus a heck of a lot more to go with it.
Well,
I don't know.
the idea, the investor is in it to make money. That's why the investors are proposing to do these things. These installations are being done at districts, cities, other at colleges, so forth. So there are a growing amount of these projects being done with this power purchase agreement approach. But for the district to do it, you have to be comfortable with the assumption that all of the assumptions that the proposed model would bring to you. And so should you say to us, well, why don't we go ahead and work on Buffalo, since that's where we pay the highest rate and that's where the potential savings is the highest, and see if there's a proposal that makes sense to actually bring to the board. Or you could say, go ahead and redo the RFP and see if you can get a proposal that's a much larger one, as the Northwest Mechanical Group was proposing, saying that if you get that 10 million threshold, we can even be more competitive, which they would have to be, because at 9 cents, Mid-American is just less money. So in order, the only one where there appears to be a clear savings is Buffalo. Now, if you looked at that spreadsheet, there were a few little accounts there that were 9 and 10 cents. And those are street lights and little loads that are just tiny, and that's the reason that those rates are so high. Those are not places where it would make sense to actually put a solar installation.
I guess I'm just a skeptic, because it's at this point, I mean, we got rid of we sold or made a proposal to sell a building because we realized as a school district we're not good real estate agents. I also don't believe that we're a power company, so I would have to see some definite advantages, and right now I don't see them. I mean, when gas was $4 a gallon, how many of us would have prepaid at $3 a gallon, you know, a bunch of it? And now we're sitting there with these tickets for $3 a gallon, and all of a sudden gas is $2 a gallon. It's a gamble. I almost think we'd be better off buying a slot machine.
Director DeSalvo.
It is very complicated, and the other thing, I was surprised that the vendors aren't utility companies. So what is their license or role to be able to provide utility. You know, there's Iowa's not an unregulated electric market. So I pose that question to some attorneys. I don't have an answer yet, but I'm very curious about how a construction company or a flight, you know, whoever comes in and can say, I'm an energy producer, but, you know, we're regulated and they have to be too. So it gets so complicated there, but that's another thing I'm very interested in learning more about.
Yeah, these firms are licensed electrical contractors.
Right. So then Mid-American is still involved in getting it from that panel through the wires to where it needs to go and back out to the grid, and there's just such complexity there that it is crazy. It is way too difficult for anybody. Thank you. I appreciate all you've done with this because it is very complicated.
Director Johansson, the solar RFP, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Are you recognizing me?
Officially, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, I think, I have to say that I've looked at this quite a bit, and even though Director DeSalvo believes that it's really complex, I believe that it's really very simple. And so the technology, in fact, I look at the energy organizations, whatever they are, almost as a monopoly. And we might say something like propane costs have changed, but I would be hard pressed to think that power costs are going to be decreasing. When Mr. Maloney says, yeah, we've anticipated that they're going up at a rate of 1.9% per year, and I believe it's at least that. This rate equalization thing, yeah, maybe there's something that'll happen, but the aspect of reducing our expenditures from our general budget, I think are something that we, the board, really need to think about. I think that right now we're trying to find $6 million a year. You're going to see in a few weeks, we're going to be looking at thousands of dollars in certain cases. And it's like, if there's something we can do to reduce our expenditures in a meaningful way, it's hard for me to imagine not doing it. My biggest concern, and I would ask Mr. Maloney, because I'm really, really concerned about the tax credits running out, because if the tax credits run out, all these projects go away and we don't have a chance, right?
The current financial model is contingent upon the investor getting the tax credits, yes.
And as far as we know, those end at the end of 2016. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. That was recently extended by the Congress, and I think it was only till 2016.
And so my concern is that if we go back out, or if we ask the proposal responders to reconsider it, come back, do a different proposal, all of that, then do we just run ourselves out of time to where the whole thing doesn't make sense and we just drop the whole project?
If that's the question, yes, sir. If we run out of time and the Congress doesn't extend once again the tax credits, the financial model would not work.
So my understanding, I mean, you received these proposals some months back, didn't you?
Yes.
And
April, I believe.
I thought that the reason that it hadn't been presented so far was that John Mueller hadn't had a chance to review them. But it sounds like that's not quite the case.
No. Partly the delay is simply we're busy with lots of things, and the analysis was quite complicated, and we wanted to make sure that we understood the facts well enough to present this information to you.
One of the things that I would ask, and I don't know if you're able to respond to this, can you suggest which of the proposals, one is that we buy power, and the other is that we buy power from a power company, and the other is that we buy power from a provider that is collecting the power via solar panels. Is one of those methods of providing power greener, and I'll use quotation marks on that word, than the other?
Well, I think there would be a lot of arguments that the solar panels don't emit carbon. So some people would tell you, yes, they're greener. Director DeSalvo has something about that.
I would say that in the next 2 years, I believe it is, Mid-American Energy is pushing to be 85%, if not 100% green generation. We have the most wind generation by an investor-owned utility in the country, and we are only number 2 out of investor-owned in general, I believe, behind Texas at this time. But with the new wind generation coming, that's going to put us near where Texas produces as far as wind. So if you're looking for green generation, you're right on right now where you're at. You can't get any better.
You're telling me that Mid-American is greener, or will be within 2 years, they will be as green as solar power generation?
Yes, I am telling you that. It's a fact.
Okay, well, I have to respectfully but strongly disagree. I think that's an impossibility, but I'd sure be willing to look at the data.
Ralph, go Google Mid-American Energy wind generation.
No, I'm not going to. I have enough confidence in what's going on. I don't have to rely on a power company, and I'm not going to go Google something. If somebody has data and they want to show it, that's fine. They can present it to the board.
Well, certainly our district appreciates diversity in so many ways, and this is just one of the many ways that we offer diversity to our community. Ralph, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah.
I know that you and Director DeSalvo probably need to talk together at some point.
No. I had just started my comments. I'm not ready to end right now.
No, I'd just like to move it away from discussion about Mid-American. So if you have further comments, you have the floor.
Are you telling me I cannot ask about Mid-American in a conversation that's talking about power?
As the current chair of the board, I would prefer that we not talk about private business and their competitiveness and their ability to provide when no other representatives are here to talk about their provision. Certainly, you have the floor to talk about the issue that we're talking about here, the RFP, but I would just prefer that we don't talk about private enterprise, one company over another.
I think Mr. Maloney brought up Mid-American. He brought up the pricing. He brought up the pricing increases that are anticipated. And I'll respectfully not talk about Mid-American with respect to all these things, but I think that is trampling right on the First Amendment. I have to say that.
I appreciate your concern.
So if we can we talk about power costs then?
Most certainly.
So the power cost, as Mr. Maloney has represented it, even if it's just at Buffalo, and the 9 cents or a renegotiated other cost, which would produce what appears to be an obvious savings in dollars at Buffalo. And when I didn't look at every part of the detail in these spreadsheets that were provided. But at the 1.9% anticipated increase in power costs over the 20 years, plus the overall annuity that the district would receive at the end of 20 years, in spite of PM costs, etc., I'm just stunned. And then I have to say that green to me is very important, and I think when we look at what the board and the district have done with respect to underground energy, and I think over the years we've done a lot of work there, and we have been able to utilize a lot of that lower cost energy that's available from the ground. I think that philosophically, I believe that we should be looking at this for a number of reasons. One is I believe that it will legitimately decrease our power costs in certain cases. Two is I think it will be legitimately significantly greener than the power costs that we have. Three is that we would have an absolute cost per kilowatt hour as opposed to relying on some other organization that's going to give us rate increases at their the way that they believe, and we would not be beholden to an organization like that. I think that the issue of technology increase, I thought about that while Mr. Maloney was making the presentation, and I thought most people, at least on the board and probably even in the audience, have cell phones, I'm thinking. And it would be a rare person, I think, that would say, I'm going to wait for another 2 years or 10 to get a cell phone because the technology will be so much better. And I think that the time to act is now. I think that the tax credits that have been offered by, the way I understand it, the feds and the state have offered these tax credits, and I think that it would be appropriate. I think that it's too bad that, well, so far I haven't heard anybody really suggest that it is something we should do. I would ask, the net metering, the way that I've understood that, and from Mr. Maloney and others, and Mr. Maloney, could you respond, isn't net metering the way that the power companies, I'm trying to think of how to say this without talking about power companies. Can you describe the effect of current legislation regarding net metering?
I'm sorry, I could not.
Well, what I'm talking about is if we had different laws like they have in other states that would allow us to, say, take 40 acres of ground out in northwest Davenport and put a bunch of panels out there, and we could net meter into the grid. And that my understanding is that in Iowa, because of the legislation that is so strongly controlled by the power companies, that will never happen, and that we do have to provide power sources at each facility. That's what I'm talking about.
I believe that's the current case, that in Iowa you're permitted to put a generating system at your facility. You're not permitted to go put a big array somewhere and sell the power to Mid-American unless they ask you to do that, make you a contractor.
No, but we can't even stick it into the grid and pay for them to move it, even though it's the same power that we're taking out. Say at Central, they wouldn't allow us, and the power company will. The power organizations would so strongly oppose that because it would decrease our costs significantly, and it would actually encourage us to do something like that.
I understand the process in Iowa for net metering to be that it's not selling the power back to the utility like some other states. It's that you get a credit on a future bill for the overgeneration that you did at some time.
Right, but you get the credit at a wholesale price, and then you buy it back at retail, right?
No.
Or something like that.
If I may, can I clarify, Ralph, the situation with the credits as they are? First of all, we're regulated by the Iowa Utilities Board, so we can't just throw a rate out there and say we're going to sell it.
Wait. When you say we, who are you talking about?
Mid-American Energy Company is regulated by the Iowa Utilities Board, and they determine our rates.
Well, let me just ask then, because the vice president said I can't talk about Mid-American, but you can.
If I could just say the tax credit debate is still not regulated, and the buying back of credits by any company is still being debated by the Iowa Utilities Board. So there is a very good chance that those tax credits, or not tax credits, but the credit, so you generate more than you use, there is a very good chance that that credit that you build up in a bank, you may not get back. And that is being determined by the Iowa Utilities Board at this time.
Director Johansson, you still have the floor.
My hope is that, I guess I really wish I was there, but I'm hopeful that the board can make some sort of a decision. I know it can't vote, but if we're going to do something, I would encourage us to act fast, because I believe that if we drag our feet much longer, then the opportunity will be gone anyway, and everything will be moot. I would hope that we would at least ask for, and frankly, I think we got bona fide proposals, the way I understand Mr. Maloney's statements. The one other thing I was going to ask is that between those two proposals, do you have a recommendation, Mr. Maloney, or between the three proposals? One, let's do this provider, two is this provider, and three is just not do anything. What would your recommendation be?
The financial model predicts that there could be savings that is worth considering at Buffalo. The other schools, the proposals for the other schools, the rate's not low enough as proposed to make sense to me to make a recommendation to you to accept those. We'd have to see a different package for the group that proposed the much larger system. That was Northwest Mechanical. The smaller group, and Northwest Mechanical also was the proposer at Buffalo, not the other one. But Buffalo was the only one that clearly there's a savings.
But would you recommend that we do something, or that we just not do anything?
If I were to make a recommendation, it would be for you to consider proceeding with some negotiated situation, some package at Buffalo. If I were to make a second one, it would be to rework an RFP to make a larger aggregated package to find out if the rate was low enough to compete with Mid-American's rates.
And could we do both of those concurrently and get them done and make a decision before the end of the year, or before we would probably lose any option on tax credits anyway?
Well, yes, I believe there's time to do those, and they could be done concurrently, and they could be done overlapping, so that ultimately one group could get Buffalo and other things, or ultimately somebody could get Buffalo and somebody else could get other things. That part of the transaction, redoing an RFP, isn't really the complicated part.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Johansson. Other comments from the board? Dr. Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. This board has always been willing to investigate, research, and make decisions, and to not consider this would be counter to the way you normally operate. I see no harm in bringing together a plan, and Mr. Maloney and I can talk about what's the best combination. We don't have the experts in front of us. We're asking a lot of questions, and we're thinking we know the answers about how this would work, and I think we bringing a proposal or two to you with the experts and getting us some consultation would be a way to go. And then if you don't want to do it, that'd be fine. But to not at least take that step and do the research, it's not the way you seem to operate. And again, if we can save and if we can go green, then we have to at least think about it, in my estimation.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Well, I do have some thoughts. My understanding is that John Mueller then has provided the information that we've requested, because it seems like a lot of our decision making is waiting on some expertise, some information, and I thought we were waiting on John to provide us information, but he's really given us the information that we've asked for.
No. What we initially expected his advice on was analysis of the actual power purchase agreements, and we just haven't got our process to that point. We've engaged, we've established a contract with a billable rate and so forth, but we have not yet met. We just haven't been far enough along in the process to do the work that we expected we would ask John to do, and that would have to do with the analysis of the power purchase agreements and, of course, other things that he's aware of in his work about the rate case before the Public Utilities Board, pending legislation or discussions among legislators and so forth, that if we got to a particular recommendation, that would be the time that we would go ahead and spend the money and get the analysis of, once we got to a specific recommendation to the board and a specific power purchase agreement and so forth. We just haven't done that yet.
Okay. So my understanding that is after December this year, with the rebates going away as we understand it, the calculus all changes.
After the tax, yes, when the tax incentives vanish, the calculus changes.
Well, I mean, Dr. Tate is right. I mean, this board has always proceeded to try to do what's right by the environment, by our community, by our taxpayers. We went forward with the geothermal project in a big way with our schools. And from what we're hearing, it's paying off. Solar is an idea that came up a year and a half ago. We started talking about it seriously here as a potential way to supplement the energy in our school buildings, and it's something that the board has typically been very interested in. So the cost for us to proceed to our RFPs, as Dr. Tate had mentioned, the time, significant?
Well, it's additional staff time for me and for Marcia and some others, but we'll be doing something for you with that time, one way or the other. So yes, we're able to do the additional work as Dr. Tate suggested we might.
And time is of the essence, so board discussion on whether or not this is something that we want administration to speed up on before the end of the fiscal year. Director DeSalvo.
Dr. DeSalvo. I would just say that I want to make sure that we are educated before we make a decision, and I agree. I think it needs more research, and I invite that. I think that's what we need to do. Do our due diligence, do our research, find out what the best thing for us is to do. But I don't want to make a decision in haste because this tax credit, I mean, we've got to do our due diligence, and I don't want to get us into something that isn't going to pay back what we think. And if it is, great. I will support it. I'm all for that. But we have to do the research before we make this big decision. And that's all I'm asking. And bring in the resources and whatever. I can offer a lot there, and I'm willing to help you with that because we've got some good resources there. So that's what we really need to do that, and that's what I know this board will do.
Thank you, Director DeSalvo. Other board members? I see Director Hayes nodding yes. Director Snyder, what do you have to say on the issue? A skeptic that you are.
Oh, yeah, I am a skeptic, but I don't make any decisions without gathering the information, so I don't have a problem gathering the information. I guess I will just say I do have quite a few reservations.
Thank you. Director Mayfield?
I think the research should help you make a decision regardless of what the decision is. So you got to have the information.
Director Gozer?
I'm good with it.
Man, a few words. I like that.
Short and sweet, to the point.
And then to the man with more than a few words. Director Johansson, any thoughts? Have you heard this discussion? The consensus is that we would like the administration to move ahead with research before we make any decisions on this issue, so that we're all confirmed that this is the right thing for the district to do, be it an RFP to one school or the $10 million project.
Yep.
You're with us. Okay.
Yep.
Dr. Tate, Mr. Maloney, do you have what you need?
Yes.
Good. That was it. He did beat you. Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Appreciate it. All right. That's the end of our discussion items. Administrative reports.
None, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. That leads us up to adjournment. Do I have a motion? Motion's been made by Director Goza and seconded by Director Snyder. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. This meeting is closed.